Good evening, good evening, good evening. Can everyone hear me? You know, you can't see me. How are we all tonight? Are we living in a golden age of stupidity? Yes. So, I got a thing. I got to get it off my chest. I live in northern Colorado, and northern Colorado is kind of a desert. It doesn't really, get enough rain. So I want to know why in the name of fuck do we have so very many lawns and parkways with manicured grass on them? Why? Can't can't really can't really fathom why. They take up so much water. In the summertime, they water twice a day. They don't maintain the sprinkler systems and it spills water out into the middle of the street. It drives me nuts. Just so obnoxious. And I can see Palm Dad is typing furiously already. We demand an Avery cam. I can't do an Avery cam for obvious reasons. Well, actually, he's just sitting here on the bed very merrily. Hang on a second. I know how to do this. Okay, we need no. Window capture, display capture, audio input capture, video capture device. Create new HD camera, which just turned on. Excellent. However, it is covered. Avery! Yeah, we have an Avery cam. You want to do a trick? You want to trick? Want to do something? No, you just want to hang out? I thought so. Come here, you good boy. I love you. Yeah, you good boy. I love you lots. He apparently didn't want much camera time. Properties. And the Avery cam is done. Look at that poor slave. You'll notice if you look closely at my pictures of Avery. Oh, did it? Damn it. Oh, let's make sure that works properly again. What microphone are you using? You're using the correct one. Okay. Look at that poor slave. You'll notice if you look at my pictures of Avery, he doesn't wear a collar in the house, and that's mostly because I don't want him to get it caught on something and choking. Uh, I had one case one night, or one morning rather, I woke up and my cousin typically feeds all the animals, the two cats and him, before she goes to school. She's a teacher. Uh, and he was in his kennel because he will steal the cat's food otherwise. And he's sitting in his kennel, and all of a sudden I hear him yipping, and I run out of bed, come downstairs, and he had managed to get his teeth stuck through the kennel. And I'm like, how the fuck did you manage that? It was a scary moment because I wasn't quite sure how he got in there or how to get him out. I had to kind of finagle his mouth, which was a dangerous occupation. So before we get going, and I'm kind of wondering if Maya's going to kick Bad Science Sunday over here, and I don't want to start too early. Theoretically, she's ending her show in short order, but not really. With us changing the format and Hetman going behind the scenes a lot more often, I think we're going to go back to going on face cams. because he was the one who was principally concerned with the camera problem. I saw you sent me the video. I didn't have time to look at it today. What really inspired me to kind of think this stream up was Sunday's coverage of Wick and Erudite talking to Drew Pavlo, that walking advertisement for condoms. Um, and Drew Pavlo, if you don't know, is primarily someone who exists on Twitter to say stupid things. And he gets on the Wick show, and I only watched part of Sunday's stream because I can't stand Wick, and I can't stand Erudite, and I can't stand Drew Pavlo, and all three of them together are just aneurysm inducing. And frankly, I've already done aneurysms this year, so I'm not in the mood for a second. And he gets up and he says, can we send ICE to deport him? Yes, we can. We can send all of ICE to Australia. Have him get lost in the outback. Check in a few weeks, see what happens. And he goes on about this thing about how he thinks only immigrants who can assimilate properly should be allowed to come to the West. And this is why I'm going back to face cams, because I just did air quotes and you couldn't see it. And quite apart from Western chauvinism being a normal thing to like be, particularly if you're fucking Greek, a fucking Greek immigrant, Jesus Christ, let's be white supremacist about being Greek. That seems to be shaky ground to stand on. And quite apart from that, I kind of realized that Drew Pavlo is an idiot. But the biggest problem is that Wick and Erudite, who is ostensibly studying to become a citizen of the United States, doesn't know enough American history to know that Drew Pavlo sounds just like a fucking Ku Klux Klan wizard. And it really struck me because if you study American history extensively, you will come up against this reoccurring theme where you have a wave of immigrants arrive from somewhere in Europe and they are suddenly regarded as not white, not fitting in. They're regarded as invaders, as a threat to the people who live here currently. And this happens again and again and again. Italians experience this. The Irish experience this in American history. It comes up again and again. And for two groups in particular, I think it has a particular amount of reoccurrence. And this particular set of groups is obviously Black Americans and Latino Americans. And I would say Mexicans broadly, and that certainly was the truth in the past. But now you see a very large swath of Latinos coming from Central America, from South America, who are treated roughly the same. So it has become a much larger issue and a much more significant racial problem than it has in the past. I bet you Shakespeare is in the now furiously typing about Operation Wetback from after World War II. And we'll talk about that. Trust me, we will. I'm stalling a little bit tonight. I'm gonna go a little long, I think. He did a stream with Connor Thomaslin, who's British and red pilled him. Well, you know. Wow, 50-50 on the face cam. Jeez. I don't care. I'm probably going to do it anyway. There is, I think, a particular amount. It's very easy to become emotional and to make emotionally satisfying arguments. For conservatism, it's very difficult to make logical ones, but God help you, you can try to make those emotional ones stick, and sometimes they do. Faux democracy. Yes, I am actually very much the dictator here. No kings but me. Do. And like, it's not an uncommon argument, right? It's not this uncommon argument that they go, well, we want people who can assimilate properly. And my question always comes down to, by what mechanism do people assimilate? You see, I come from Chicago, and Chicago is a great city when it's not overrun by ICE agents. And one of the things you learn about Chicago really quick is it is very, very deliberately laid out and designed in a particular way. There's a grid system, and in that grid system, you can find neighborhoods, but more importantly, you can find blocks. Just it'll be a set of old houses and a church, and then the next street over, there's a set of old houses and a completely different denomination of church. And as Chicago is growing throughout the 1800s, it becomes this sort of bifurcated set of neighborhoods. You'll have an Italian neighborhood, and then an Irish neighborhood, and then a Polish neighborhood, and little streets and areas where people go and they move to be near one another. And this was not uncommon. It spread out into the suburbs too of Chicago. When you talk about Chicago, the metropolitan area, it's huge. Uh, for an American cities are pretty small comparatively speaking to the rest of the world, but the Chicago with its metropolitan area is a pretty decent match, size population wise, for some cities. Um, and in particular, you can see that kind of replicating throughout the Southwest side, where most of my family comes from, uh, or rather lived previously. Some of my family still lives there. The rest of us are here in Colorado. And so you see that kind of replication of that people would immigrate to certain areas and stick together. To a certain extent, sometimes it didn't quite work out. My grandmother, for instance, was Lithuanian, and my grandfather was from Luxembourg and is German and French, and therefore, uh, it was quite unlikely that they would have met otherwise had they not met at school. But by and large, you have a particular attitude that people take towards immigrants to the United States that has always been kind of tragic. My great grandfather, he was an engineer. He had degrees. He was a perfectly qualified engineer. He came to the United States ahead of my great grandmother from Luxembourg, did not speak a word of English, and could not get a job as an engineer. And instead, he got a job polishing silver. This is not a good job. You don't want this job. If you do get this job, wear a respirator. He got sick, tuberculosis. They sent him out to Arizona, and he died. Obviously, my family made it over here eventually, just in time for World War One to happen. But we've always had this problem. It's not a new thing. Nothing that Drew said in his discussion with Erudite was new. Nothing was out of place at a Klan rally. It was all very familiar if you're familiar with American history, and it's a tragedy because we're coming to the point where it's getting out of hand, and I think where are we at? We're almost to my we're almost here to my 45 on my starting point tonight. So let's just get into it. The other morning, when I was driving to dialysis, I was listening to MSNBC on Sirius XM, which is a horrible thing full of terrible ads, by the way. And it was Saturday morning, and I was listening. So it was yesterday, and I was listening to them talk about Donald Trump's new refugee program. Yeah, glass blowing and mining are very bad for your health. Don't The children should not yearn for the mines. And on the radio, they're talking about how we should only accept refugees from countries that can be guaranteed to assimilate. And I thought, well, holy fuck, Woodrow Wilson would be so happy. Woodrow Wilson, President of the United States, roughly this time the second KKK came around, was a horrible, horrible, racist, self aggrandizing narcissist who we should have never elected. So tonight, let's talk about this article from Mother Jones. Written by Mr. Noah Lannard. After bringing white South Africans to the United States as refugees earlier this year, the Trump administration is reportedly considering granting protection to members of far-right European parties. According to the New York Times, the proposal that Donald Trump is now weighing would prioritize Europeans who are allegedly targeted for peaceful expression of views online, such as opposition to mass migration or support for populist political parties. Metatron, the YouTuber, is presently working on becoming an American citizen, and he should be deported. Fucking Nazi. While we're on the topic, the program would also give preference to English speakers and more white South Africans. White South Africans, by the way, own the vast majority of South Africa still. There is no real oppression for them. The paper reports that officials from the Departments of State and Homeland Security presented the plans, which are still under consideration to the White House, in April and July. There is nothing subtle about this combined effort. Trump administration officials are trying to turn the United States' long-celebrated refugee program, which has provided a safe haven to millions of people from across the world, into a tool of white nationalism. And I would add, they're using it to try to bolster a very particular ideology that they have cultivated for the Republican Party. Trump suspended refugee admissions entirely on his first day back in office. The main exception came in May when the United States took in about 50 white Afrikaners from South Africa, which was, by the way, some performative nonsense. For the next year, the administration is planning to cap refugees at a record low of 7,500. The Times reported earlier this month that is down from the 1,200 person cap set by Joe Biden's administration in September of 2024, and it is half of the then record low 15,000 person cap set by Trump during his first term. There are already more than 120,000 refugees around the world who are conditionally approved to resettle in the United States. Instead of being resettled here, they may be passed over in favor of right-wing whites who are not refugees in any meaning of the term. At the same time, DHS is on social media calling for people to remigrate, a far-right anti-immigrant term popularized in Europe that the Associated Press has described as a chilling notion of returning immigrants to their native lands in what amounts to a soft-style ethnic cleansing. There's nothing soft about it, by the way. If you're deporting people in chains, you're not doing a soft ethnic cleansing. The Trump administration is not only considering offering refuge to right-wing Europeans, it is looking to them for inspiration. There's a couple other points that have been quietly overlooked, I think, in some circles. The first is that the far right has been targeting the Southern Poverty Law Center, which is nothing new. They routinely target them as a hate group, and because they dare to label the far right as a hate group. Additionally, the Anti-Defamation League got hit by Elon Musk as well as a hate group for labeling Turning Points USA, which is a hate organization, as such. This kind of effort is very well designed. It's getting rid of your ability, or rather, not your necessarily, but rather our ability to categorize right-wing terrorism and hate. And they're looking to import right-wing terrorists now, instead of people of color. The Times reported that the language about granting refugee status to Europeans targeted for supporting populist parties appears to refer to members of Alternative for Germany, the AfD, the hard-right German political party. Vice President J.D. Vance has defended the party and met with its leader while in Europe earlier this year. The AfD is so extreme that even Marine Le Pen's right-wing French National Rally Party cut its ties with it in the European Parliament last year. And you got to wonder, how far from the grace of God have you strayed if Marine Le Pen is running away from you in fear? The split happened after Maximilian Krah, the AfD's leading candidate, claimed that not all members of the Nazi SS were criminals. After resigning from the AfD's board before the election, was welcomed back into the party earlier this year. Bjorn Hack, another senior AfD official, was found guilty of beginning a call in response to a Nazi slogan, "Everything for Germany." He'd been previously being fined for the same slogan at a 2021 event. In 2019, a German court held that it was not libelous to call him a fascist because there was a verifiable factual basis for the claim. In February, the AfD received more than 20% of the country's vote, up from 10% in 2021. Raka, despite his multiple fines for dredging up a Nazi slogan, is unlikely to want to leave Germany for the United States anytime soon. He's currently a member of a state parliament in which they now hold more seats than any other party. So here's what we're looking at. If you've looked at my announcement earlier today, we're looking at the end, really, of any kind of America that you might have recognized from the 90s or the early aughts. It's over. It's done. It's gone. We are going to have to start to reckon with this problem rather significantly. Nope. I don't quite think it's new. Obviously, I don't think it's useful. I believe very strongly in multiculturalism. I believe very strongly that the best way for people to learn to get along is to live next to one another. You look at neighborhoods and you see things like a fusion of Italian American recipes and culinary cuisine and culture that has grown up here from American immigrants from Italy building their culture, or from Mexican culture, or any culture really, Polish, American, all these fusions of culture, and they come about because we live next to one another. What Donald Trump is arguing for, what people like Nick Fuentes argue for, what Drew Pavlo is arguing for, isn't something that works. There's a problem you come up with. You build yourself your white country, your white supremacist country, where only people you consider pure white can live, and suddenly you have the same problems as before that they told you they were going to solve. You have the same issues because the problem was never the immigrants. And we really are living through this period of illiberalism, not dissimilar to what happened in the 20s and 30s. And it's always the same thing. People say democracies can't solve problems. And the reality is they're actually really good at solving problems that exist within the ideological niche that they have carved out for themselves. And the biggest problem with liberalism is that it is furiously attached to a certain aspect of property ownership and private property rights that prevent it from redistributing wealth out from the rich and giving it to the poor. And this means that for so many problems, that liberalism has and that our democracy is facing today, that people are blaming on immigration, there is no real solution, because the solution requires you to attack a fundamental core pillar of what liberalism stands for, and that is unadulterated, uncontrolled capital expansion. This moment isn't unique in history. We've seen time and time again that wealth inequality tears societies apart. It doesn't have to be a democracy, it doesn't have to be a democratic society at all. Sparta, it happened in Sparta. The inability of them to stop accumulating wealth meant that fewer and fewer people were Spartiates. Fewer people could fill out the roles of the Spartan war army, and eventually it was simply an army with a handful of Spartans and mostly slaves. You saw it in Rome, where the farms in Rome, Italia, got consolidated into huge latifundas and built over time into these massive positions owned by that. And so, when the Marian reforms came around and people had to go and decide how they're going to pay soldiers for their 20 years or 16 years of service, depending on the time, they had to go find new lands, and they made people loyal to them alone, so that when Solo rolls around or Caesar rolls around, he can command armies that are totally disloyal to the state. Income inequality rips societies apart, and it's ripping our society apart in very real ways. The GDP is up this quarter, by the way. It wasn't expected to be, but what happened, because imports are subtracted and everyone bought all the things they planned on importing last quarter, we have a little bump for the moment, roughly on par with growth. But imports have just plummeted because of Donald Trump's tariffs. And meanwhile, while the economy looks good and the stock market looks good, everywhere I go, prices are going up. Everyone I know is talking about rising prices, how they can't afford things, how they can't they're worried about staying in their homes. And the economic prosperity that we're seeing in the market isn't being reflected here for you and me, because you don't make that money. And it's not a new thing either, right? 2008 crash, before that you had banks writing about the need to sell to people who were not Main Street, the need to sell to a class of people who could simply afford to do nothing but invest. And the economy and the stock market have gradually become divorced from the realities of everyday life, but they still are fueled by it. So there's still this desire for infinite growth, for growth quarter after quarter after quarter, for better returns for investors and better returns for companies, and profits quarter after quarter after quarter, and none of it is seen by you or me. American workers are the most productive they've been in generations, and none of it's seen by you or me. Our wages are essentially static. So we are increasingly unable to live in this country because we can't afford it. And one of the things I've seen on X being argued again and again by idiot right wingers is, if we just deport a couple 100 million people, I don't know where you're going to get someone, that many people, when there's maybe 15 million undocumented people in the country. But if we just deport enough people, then housing will become affordable again. And housing isn't unaffordable because immigrants are buying houses. Housing is unaffordable because we're building unaffordable houses. So you're seeing a case where people are mad, and you've seen them be mad, and you're mad. I've seen you guys be mad. You're seeing a case where people are mad because they can't afford to live in the manner with which they were told that they would be able to do if they simply worked hard. It's completely divorced from reality for them now. Rent, yeah, rent is through the roof. You're good, Bubba. Go lay down. Rent is through the roof, and there really isn't there really isn't an easy answer for this, to be honest with you. There's not going to be like Bernie Sanders isn't the kind of, or AOC or any of these. They're not really going to be able to build a reform into that. If there's going to be something that saves us, it's going to be us. And it's not going to be us doing stupid shit like you saw the DSA advocates doing online, talking about killing Cuban diasporans or whatever the fuck they were doing today. It's going to start on the ground, and it's going to start with organizing, and it's going to start with things like building tenants associations and building building, it's going to start with gardening, unfortunately, which means we might have to be listening to Palm Dead more often, and building community gardens. It's going to start by gradually building the networks and the things that will provide for people when capitalism stops. That's what resistance ultimately is going to mean. It's not going to be it's not going to be it's not going to be whatever the fuck people think it is with fighting and violence. It's going to be being there when everything collapses around us. No, mutual aid is not a coping mechanism. Mutual aid is power. It's parallel power. If you're the one who's building things, you build institutions through building aid. That's what you do. Like giving, I agree with you that, like, when someone goes, I'm short whatever this month, can you help spot me, type shit that mutual aid sometimes takes the form of, yes, that is not a challenge to power institutions. uh Building institutions, though, around helping one another and being there, like, if your town has a tenants association that is keeping the rents low and challenging those things, that's an institution. You are building a parallel power structure and an organization that can, when if necessary, take control of a portion of government. uh, that's not the same thing as the you scratch my back, I'll scratch your back mutual aid. You build parallel power structures. Like, okay, let's go back to American history a little bit more for a minute. Committees of correspondence during the American Revolution that organize boycotts and give people the ability to understand what actions they can take that support the Bostonians, or at least early on, and later on the cause generally. Those are not mutual aid societies. What they are organizations that are building out governments. And it came in handy because now you had a network of people that can interact with the government by writing bills and having lobbyists and think tanks. Well, you can't build those without money anyway. Either way you slice that, you have to turn around and start building up those networks that can start to develop those institutions. Anyway, committees of correspondence. So you have still had, like, for example, loyalist governors in some cases. The committees of correspondence and the assemblies could go around them and act independently of them and act as a government. And they could direct people to do things, to engage with the revolution in certain ways. And that's how you develop parallel power structures. The problem that you run into, Jempt, is no, but it's somewhere that you make those connections that might. You build space. What you have to do is you have to build space that allows for people to interact in positive ways together, and that allows for them to necessarily figure out in what ways they can support each other and in what ways they can come together to build institutions and networks. So you create draws in that way, right? You build a system where people are engaging with one another and engaging with their needs and understanding each other's needs, and so that they can start to push towards that. Well, they've also not really, like, if we're talking here in the United States, they've not really had to. Jem, you want to get in a voice chat? It will be easier than me just sitting here waiting for you to type replies. I'll just have bad Bluetooth. Okay, fine. No, we're talking about Jem is such a slow YouTuber. Yes, he is. What we're talking about here is a first time in American history that we are really seeing an economy totally divorced from its working class, utterly and completely. For example, you're looking at what people are saying about AI, and they're starting to believe that AI is going to replace mid range workers. You are seeing the largest gap between what we are capable of doing from organizing and how we can impact the present system, because the system. You're getting called out by Quick here, Jemt, but you've seen the largest gap in American history from that position. So yes, I will fully acknowledge that people have had problems in the past that would have been immensely assisted by the development of outside institutions and parallel power structures. But this is the first time that they are absolutely going to be required, without a doubt, in the same way as before. Yeah, and just to highlight Palm Dad here, yes, absolutely. It helps you meet others in the community. Your ability to meet people, and this is something we've talked about in the past, particularly when we're talking about trying to positively address things like male loneliness by, telling you to go out and meet people, which clearly hasn't worked. Uh there's a lot less spaces that you can simply exist in a community anymore that you don't have to pay for. Why are you looking at the garbage can, dog? You were going to go in that garbage can to find something to distract me with, weren't you? Yeah, you're mad. Meet them at church. No, don't. Okay. Some churches are fine. Some churches are not fine. Also, ladies, and there's probably not many of you tonight, you're going to meet the weirdest people, the weirdest single guys at church. Go elsewhere. You're better off at a bar. Religion makes very poor bedfellows. But churches are community spaces and tend to be free, but they also come with a hook, right? And that's kind of what we're talking about here. If you want to make a leftist movement succeed, you need to start building the hook, because the hook will lead to the institution. Because here's the second part of this equation: it's difficult to figure out where you're at until you're sitting with everyone and you'll be able to build a picture of the landscape. Hello, ladies. God told me we should date. I've been staring at you for 15 minutes. We got to get married now. Well, if you can't meet someone at church, you should definitely meet them in line to refill your prescription at a pharmacy. That's definitely the second best place to meet women. Hi, Aunt Jer. How are you? Here's the problem. If I go into my YouTube analytics, it says 100% of my audience is between the ages of 20 and 35 and all men. And I know that's not entirely correct, but it's probably roughly correct. Here's kind of, again, what you're getting at. I'm fine-ish. There you go. Oh, speaking of which, we're on the topic of age. This week is my birthday. So we'll probably be doing something fun, not the day of, because someone will do something that'll annoy me that day, but almost positively something this week outside of the regular Sunday show. What are you doing? Pay attention. Thank you. Nevertheless, I also wouldn't be looking for a man at church, or nor would I be looking for a man anywhere, but I suspect that we have a very similar mindset to that. When I lived in Boys Town, they called me an honorary lesbian. Anyway. Where was I? Ah, yes. No, you're trapped now, Epidius. This kind of brings me into the point I posted earlier tonight. The 4 ways that things go on after democracy falls. We're going to start covering that extensively. It's going to be a next week. We're going to start talking about Weimar Germany, because nobody really knows how that works. And along with that, the plan is start bringing those things in more or less coincidentally. Vermeer, yeah, fine. Let's all roll our V's, please. Along with a couple video essays that we are proceeding apace on, and media essays. And really, that's all I had for you tonight. So, with that, I want to thank you all for coming out. Stay tuned for next week, which will be a full long stream. I'm still getting back into the swing of things. Like, subscribe, do all that YouTube shit. Have a good night.
If your soul has grown weary and your heart feels tired, let the water wash away your sins. And if the snow begins to fall and you can't find a fire, let the water wash away your sins. If the nighttime lasts forever, but the days are cruel and mean, let the water wash away your sins. And you thought one day you'd be happy if you held in all your screams. Let the water wash away your sins. All right. Let the water wash away your sins. Let the water wash away your sins. Now that this old world is ending, a new one begins. Let the water wash away your sins. Spent your whole life working for a world that feeds on doubt. Let the water wash away your sins. And those banks keep getting bigger while your pockets empty out. Let the water wash away your sins. And if all the thieves and liars have been knocking at your door, let the water wash away your sins. And they said they'd feed your family, and you believed what they swore. Let the water wash away your sins. Let the water wash away your sins. Let the water wash away your sins. Now that this old world is ending, a new one begins. Let the water wash away your sins. If you thought there was a heaven, but you can't find the proof, let the water wash away your sins. And you can see your brothers marching, but you can't speak your truth. Let the water wash away your sins. Oh, if your mother was a screamer and your father ruled with fists, let the water wash away your sins. And if you're thinking about the highway and you're looking at your wrists, let the